Well, I think there's a number of things. There's millions of people with disabilities across the world, 785 million. There's millions here in the Philippines, and the church has been by and large vacant when it comes to people with disabilities. So the message is that Jesus Christ really loves people with disabilities. 70% of the Gospels have reference to someone with a disability. Our churches need to open up and embrace this population, the families, the children, and the really beautiful surprise in it is that when we do that, we're all changed. It affects all of us in an incredibly positive way with the gifts that they bring.
That's it?
Oh, I can tell you more. You have some questions? Or?
So, so you wanted the churches to be more aware, maybe more active,
first of all, to see
proactive.
Yes, to see people with disabilities, to be aware of them, and then when the question comes up about people with disabilities entering into the church, a lot of times what happens is they respond to, we can't do this. We don't have a way of embracing these people. We don't have a way of meeting the needs. Prejudices come up. We don't think they should have the sacraments because do they understand it? And we need to adopt a different posture. Instead of we can't, it needs to be how. And when we use the how question instead of we can't, it leads to creative opportunities to embrace different people in our congregations. And one of the things we find out is this whole thing about do they understand the gospel? Do they get it? It is such a crucial question. And the truth of the fact is that they do get it. They get it with their spirits, not with their minds, not with their intellect as much. And they have the right to hear about Jesus Christ as much as anybody else and a chance to embrace him in their lives. But when they come, like I was mentioning, when they come into a congregation, they bring these incredible gifts of love, of dance, they'll dance to worship, joy, the ability to connect people, the ability to, instead of competition, they make cooperation happen between people because we have to help each other. And so they have huge gifts that they bring to all of us, and I want the church to experience that, to open up to that. The families are burdened. 85% of the families are single-parent families because of the strain of having someone with a disability. Parents are just crying out in a really weary state for help in their families, and we need as a church to embrace that and to help these families and give them a support system that allows them to thrive and know they're not alone, they've not been abandoned by God, but that God has seen them, heard their cries, and it's proven through the support of people around them that come together from the church.
For people who belong in families where there are children or persons of with disabilities, they might immediately understand what you're trying to say, but maybe for somebody who doesn't have any interaction
with a family dynamic and family
members.
Yes.
And who just probably know of persons with disability from, like, hearsay or maybe prejudices, as you say.
Yeah.
So maybe they're thinking like, oh, maybe they'll be noisy, or maybe it's like, how do you break down barriers and how do you break down the prejudices?
The key to breaking down the barriers is our own willingness to listen. And I would encourage anyone that can know someone with a family that has a child with a disability and maybe they've not come close to them, I would challenge them to come close and go, can you tell me about your family? Can you tell me what you deal with? Can you tell me what your needs are? Can you tell me what your joys are? Because once we get near like that and find out, it's shocking. And I believe that's where compassion comes in, and we're mobilized. But a family with a child with disability is dealing with things like rejection of their child, misunderstanding, no place for their child, the pain a parent feels. Those of us who are parents know that when our children suffer, there is no greater suffering in our lives than that. And these are families that are suffering with the way their children are treated. They're wondering what future is there for them. They wonder where they can have a place where there's friendships, real genuine friendships with their children. Some of them are around-the-clock care, physical care, that's exhausting day in and day out. The parents don't have breaks to take to go out because there's no one that will, babysit their children. No one's willing to sign up for that. So those are some of the obstacles that are there. The church has tremendous resources to be able to help with this. But first, it really does start with listening and finding out what is going on with these families. And a lot of times they don't feel heard. They don't know if anybody cares. And I think that we really have to take that initiative to say, I really care, I want to hear, and I want to start doing something with your family. It starts that personally and that small. Could I take your son out for an ice cream once a week? Will you teach me what things I need to know? It's taking that type of initiative will make a huge difference in that family.
So it's like a one-on-one.
Yes.
Yes, not really like a blanket effort. Do you mind if we move to this side, because I'm struggling to understand you?
Yes.
Here, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So it's more of like a one-on-one empowering, or maybe making people aware of what they can do in their own way, and then maybe it catching on because of their experience, then they can speak
Yes.
on behalf of the
Disability ministry, one of the beautiful things about it is it doesn't have to be, we have 50 people all at once that we're somehow serving. It just starts with one family. It starts with one child. And a lot of times the parents are networked with other parents or kids with special needs. And so when you begin to pay attention to one child, you get a reputation. And maybe there's more people that can come in. And there's a second child, a second family. But yeah, it's personal. It's one-on-one. It's small. And it eventually grows.
Okay. So, how do you reach out to the families? Like, first, whoever attended yesterday, maybe is that how you begin in like coming in like a cold tapping people around a place?
Yeah.
So you had a conference yesterday.
Right. We had the conference, and Moses, who leads God is Able.
Yes.
His goal is to have champions, people that represent people with disabilities in different churches that can begin to stir that up and begin to initiate conversations and find people that in those own congregations that have a child with a disability or is a disabled person in that congregation, and then to be able to mobilize people in the congregation how to help.
Okay.
Yeah, and that just takes one person who feels a calling to do this and wants to reach out and wants to bring those families out. And in a church setting, I think that one of the things that can be done is whoever's in the church that has a family with a disability, and then, like I said, they're networked. The parents all know one another. They might bring some other people in, but just having a roundtable sort of discussion with, we're here to understand what your needs are in this church, and it'd be important that there's some church leadership in it, someone representing church leadership.
Yes.
We're here to understand what you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And there are parents who stop going to church because either they're asked not to come because their child is distracted, or they've just given up because they've been heard we don't have a place here, we don't know what we can do. And again, that goes back to the how question. If we go to the how question, when a family comes up and says, I want to come here, but I can't do it with my child, there's no place in the youth group, whatever, the person says, let's talk about how could we serve your son or your daughter and your family? What needs to happen? How could we involve them in the youth group? And then there's training that can go on at that point for the person who has some knowledge of it to help the youth group or to help a college group or whoever it is to integrate them in.
And are these like suggestions, maybe, are they outlined in a website that I could look at? Like maybe you'll say, ideally there would be a room for the family so that they can also listen, like, with a screen, maybe they can also kind of participate.
There is the ministry that I worked for 34 years, Young Life Capernaum. We started out with one club with kids with disabilities in 1986, and it's now in 300 places in the U.S. and 40 countries. So it's a ministry that began out of nothing that has completely blossomed around the world. Young Life has a website. You can go to the Young Life website and then go onto Capernaum, Capernaum, and you can get down to the Capernaum website, and they'll have a lot of different resources that you can look at. I also wrote a book called Missing Stars, Fallen Sparrows that is written specifically for churches and for people in churches who think, I couldn't do this, but I wouldn't even know how. And so that's also a resource that someone can use.
Where is this book available?
It's available on Amazon.
Oh,
Yeah, Missing Stars, Fallen Sparrows,
Yes. And
under
the-
my name, Nick Palermo.
yes. And the website is called younglife.com.
Young Life, I don't know what the exact address of it is, but Young Life's an international organization. If you just go on Young Life, you'll be able to get to their website.
And it's specifically for people with disabilities.
The Capernaum is.
Capernaum is.
So Capernaum is a part of Young Life.
Okay.
So once you get onto the Young Life website,
Go to
you can
Capernaum.
go to Capernaum.
Okay. Yeah. And for I guess that involves also I already you covered like what your message would be for families with persons of with disabilities.
Well,
Yeah.
for families, what I would say is if you are a family that's involved in a church